Well, folks, we got some good news and some bad news. We'll start with the bad news first, as that's how we do it around here. It really is coming in outside. The good news, it's raining cats and dogs. Welcome to our fourth installment. I'm your host, Henry Jansen, sports writer for the Kirksville Daily Express, and we have a pretty fun one for you this evening. Tonight, we'll be joined by a couple Truman teams that are respectively going dancing. David Gannon will join us from Truman State University Volleyball as they head for the GLVC Tournament this weekend. And later on, we'll be joined by Austin Zoda as the Bulldogs have received news as of last night that they've qualified for the National Tournament Division II for the first time in 31 years. In the meantime, we'll look ahead to Kirksville's wrestling program's upcoming seasons with coaches James Alter with the boys and Coach Nick Cook of the girls. But first and foremost tonight, we are joined by David Gannon, Truman State University Volleyball. Coach, very good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Coming off of a senior day on Saturday where the Bulldogs already knew that they had solidified a spot in the GLVC tournament, the only way that they could impact that seeding was with a victory. They had already clinched a seed. Coach Gannon, look ahead a little bit to this upcoming GLVC tournament and look back a little bit to how your season has gotten you to this point to being top 8 within the conference.
Yeah, it's been even further back from the start of the season. This being my 5th season, it's been a grind since day one, since year one, and we've finally gotten to a point where I have a little bit of confidence, a little bit of momentum in our way. But this year we kind of came off of a really, really close 2024 year. We lost something like 12 or 13 fifth game sets last year. So we were so close. And so coming into this year, I knew that we had a shot. If I scheduled a little bit differently, our kids are ready to come in and compete, and that's exactly what they've done the last couple months. So it's awesome to be able to say that we're in the conference tournament. We had our GLVC call today, and kind of humbling to be in the same Zoom screen as some of the other coaches in the league and coaches that I look up to, and just kind of a cool experience.
Talk a little bit about the conference itself. GLVC, a very strong volleyball conference. Obviously, you have teams like UMPSL who are national powers. Talk about a little bit about not necessarily walking among giants, but just kind of the strength of the conference and trial by fire to have gotten to this point.
Yeah, that's an understatement. There's never an off match. Like everyone is always on, and so we have to take that in consideration in our weekly preparation. Watching film, we get to watch film of our opponents. We get to practice some of the things that we see in practice, and we ultimately have a scout report that gives us the best shot of slaying those giants. And this year we were picked early on before we started playing. We were picked 11th, and so, which was exciting to me. Like, they didn't quite know what we had going on in our gym, and to finish out the year 6th, that feels pretty good. But man, it's never an easy day. The teams that we think we should beat show up and take it to us. Teams that we probably shouldn't beat ourselves, we have a nice game and we're able to outlast them. So it's just a really tough volleyball conference.
Talk a little bit about playing that role of dark horse, like you mentioned, being picked preseason 11th, finishing 6th, kind of nebulous. Nobody really has an idea what the Truman State University program is going to have to offer, and then putting yourself in a position to face 3-seed Quincy this Friday in Williamsville. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
Just all of the things that kind of go into that, and facing an opponent that you are obviously familiar with. I guess everybody's familiar with everybody in the GLVC, but a team that you most recently lost 3-1 against, and a couple of moments that you'd like to have back. Third time around. Talk a little bit about that matchup and what you and the girls are working on specifically for that opponent between now and when you take off on Thursday.
Yeah. Our message this whole season has just been to, don't worry about the outside noise. Just put your head down, go to work, and we'll pick our heads up in November and just kind of see where we landed, and that's kind of been our message all year. And then as far as Quincy goes, we just played them 2 weeks ago, and absolutely we had moments that I would love to have back. I think if we were to handle our business a little bit more on the serve receive side of things, if we could beat in system and have our hitters with only one block in front of them instead of two, it could have been a different story, and so I think if looking ahead, we're in neutral territory, it's not their place, not our place. So I like those prospects of being able to hit the ground running this week, work on some of those things that we know that we're better than what we showed last week, and just kind of shore up our confidence. But also it's like nothing to lose, everything to gain. They're the ones that have the pressure on them to go and stay number 3, and they don't want to get beat by a 6 seed, 6 seed number 11, at the start of the conference, like pressure's on them, so that's kind of a cool feeling if we can harness that.
Talk a little bit about your group, and you mentioned the outside noise a little bit, kind of blocking everything out and just going out and playing your game. Talk about these girls and the progress they've made from a really disappointing season last year, and the girls who have stuck around to turn this around and be the 6th seed in the GLVC.
Yeah, just determined to leave this place better than how they found it. Easy to talk about. I mentioned senior night. You talk about my 2 seniors, Jessica Prudeniak and Michaela Way. They haven't experienced a ton of success here, in their 3-4 years respectively, and so to see them, just trust that idea of putting their head down and just going to work was really cool. Testament to their senior leadership. But then, man, we've got a really fiery sophomore class, and they're hungry to get better. They're hungry to continue to work, and I don't think it has anything to do with anyone else but them and each other, and really tight knit group. And this is the first year we've had a little bit of experience on the court. We have a junior setter, Tori Creason, who's who's blossomed into just like a really nice volleyball player, and super confident in her ability to go run our offense. I can have those conversations with her, and she'll just go and execute, and she's awesome. And just can't say enough about that sophomore class. Autumn Erickson, she's one of our middle blockers who's very seldom has an off night, in a really, really tough position. Middle blocker is, they're just constantly running around side to side, back and forth, and she just kicks butt up there. And so the future is still bright, with that sophomore class, freshmen that are learning from them, just what our culture is about, what our standards are, and that's a huge part of something that we can grow on, which is really exciting, for me.
Makes your life a lot easier as a coach when you have players on the court who are kind of an extension of the coach at such a young age between your freshman and sophomore group.
Yeah.
Obviously, the future is very bright, and it's something you're enthusiastic about, but we got business to take care of on Friday first. These young girls, these freshmen and sophomores who've kind of grown up and blossomed into real collegiate volleyball players right before your eyes. What goes into that from a coaching perspective, where you can kind of take the training wheels off and trust them to dictate tempos and the course of matches?
Yeah. It's a fun process to be able to kind of see those things click, and you've heard that kind of that cliche adage of they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so I don't know if I'm good at this or not, but I really tried to show these kids that I care about them and that I ultimately want them to succeed. And I think that takes some pressure off and they can just go and play. And I may have some different ideas, from their high school or clubs that they came from, but they're very willing and eager to buy in, to the things that we're saying and doing. And it's really, really fun to just sit back and coach. We're going to have those older kids that are kind of showing the way, showing the culture, showing our standards. I get to coach, which is fun. I don't have to be a babysitter and a coach, and that's makes my job really enjoyable, rewarding, when I get to coach them and now see some success. It's very rewarding.
One last thing before we let you go, Coach Gannon. What's the recruiting trail going to look like for you, in this off season?
Yeah, we're just signed 2 wonderful athletes that are going to come in and help us in our gym right away. And then we're going to need to fill a pretty big 2027 class. Name a position and we probably need one of them, and so it's going to be, hitting that trail pretty hard and making sure that those kids really fit with, sophomore, freshman classes that I've mentioned, to make sure that we can keep this thing rolling. So.
Very good, Coach. Coach David Gannon, Truman State University head women's volleyball coach. We appreciate your time this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks.
Joined now by Kirksville boys head wrestling coach James Alter. Coach Alter, very good to have you this evening.
Thank you.
Walk me as you are closing in on your opening meet with Trenton hosting Trenton. Is that correct?
Yep.
When did you guys begin practice? Talk about all of the early season stuff now that the off season, so to speak, is over, and we're really looking at the season itself kicking off.
We started last Monday. It was our first practice, and saw a lot of new faces, and saw some the kids you expect to be there. The first week was solid, even with the first year wrestlers that came in. They brought their work ethic with them. So. But those guys that are returning, they haven't missed a beat. So I think it is a little tough because you got a returning state champ and returning state medalist, and then you got a kid that has never stepped on a mat before. So it's just trying to find that balance of are we starting at square one, and then we progress, and so those returning guys with the experience, they don't get burned out. Like, man, what are we doing? It's been a solid first week.
Talk a little bit about some of that returning leadership, like we were talking about a handful of minutes ago. You got guys who really know how to encourage the younger guys, not only from an encouragement standpoint, but also from a knowledge standpoint. And that kind of tutelage while your group is still so big, nobody's gotten flamed out yet, like you said, too early for that. How far does it go for you as a coach to have guys also in the room who really can give these younger guys the advice that they need?
It is an interesting, just based off the first week, it's an interesting dynamic. We may not have that vocal leader per se, but we have guys that lead by example, and it's it's almost like those newer guys are trying to keep up, with those returners. You got the returning state champ Austin Hunter, and he's a great role model on the mat example. This is the standard. This is how we do things. This is the pace we want in our room. And, you got Justin Shooter right there with him, and two solid guys. That they've been working out together, and, we've done a little scrapping, a little live, and, those guys are just getting after it. And, we got a handful of seniors and juniors. So, we got a wealth of knowledge in our room.
As far as these guys who you finally are able to get your hands on as the high school head coach, some kids who you've seen over the course of time coming up through kids club, middle school, things like that. Talk about some of these young guys, some of these incoming freshmen.
We got Jason Shooter. He'll be a sophomore this year. He caught a medal last year. It's just the same deal. It's like he's going to be fun to watch. He's got a great career ahead of him, and he's super competitive. He may not be the most, we don't really have the vocal guy, but it's like just that edge that he wants to be the best, and he's going to show up every day and prove himself that he's the guy to beat. It's last year this kid's a senior, Brantley Kotwitz, came out as a junior, first year wrestler. And they ended up qualifying for the state tournament, won a match at the state tournament. And, it's like, we're excited to see, those kids that they just want to go out and compete. And it started, they're in the thick of it, and it's just the beginning. So
talk a little bit about, it always cracks me up. The Shooter boys, their entire life has been wrestling. Having somebody like that in the room who is an extension of a coach in more ways than one, how far that goes for you?
It can be a little interesting. They've been around this sport, since they were born. With their dad being the head coach at Truman, and it's like sometimes they'll ask, like, well, why are we doing this? Are you sure we should be doing this? Like, yeah, we're going to do this because, this is how I want to run things. But it's just, those two kids, they're great. But man, that crazy competitive. And, Justin has had I hope, to see his senior year, end up on top of the podium. He's come up short a couple of times, but, I feel like he sees it as the past is the past, and I get one more year to go out with a bang.
Come back to Kotwitz again for a second. I like to give him a shameless plug. He was on one of these KBSL teams that I coached a handful of summers ago, and he's always just been the most easygoing, mildest mannered kid that there possibly is, but at the same time, he's got that competitive chip for sure. Talk to me a little bit about a guy like that, like you say, has never even really given the sport a fair shake until just last year, and finds himself in a position to have success and bring the Tigers some points this winter.
It's like we kind of cross paths at church, and he's a football player, and it's like, you want to give it a shot. I mean, you're pretty athletic, you're a well-built kid, might as well come out and give it a shot, give it a try. And he had some guys that he had class with that wrestled, Hayden Dimmitt and Jaden Crisp. They kind of pulled him into the room, and it is crazy. Like you don't need 1,000 moves to be good, and he was able to just kind of pick up on a few things. And granted, he's really, really strong, And so, yeah, I mean, he soaked it up, and like he got good, a few things, and had success.
What is that like as a coach, especially a wrestling coach, where you are always looking for kids who aren't necessarily playing basketball, not necessarily doing anything in the winter, to tell them to just, hey, come out, come give it a shot, give it a fair shake?
Yeah, it's just you find the kids that just want to compete, and I feel like that's just kind of like an underlying message in wrestling. It's like you can't be afraid of competition. Uh, it Whether it's athletics, whether it's life, like you're always going to have to compete for something that you want. And you find these kids that don't have a sport in the winter. It's like you're going to get better at your. I mean, let's just say like their primary sport is football. It's like you going out and competing, and that's going to make you better at football. We're going to learn some skills, to use your hands a little bit differently, balance, footwork, etc. It's only going to make you better at that primary sport. Like even just at practice, we do some just off the wall things, and it's just like be an athlete. You just can't go around clanking around. You gotta be athletic, and we do work on their athleticism, and it's good. I mean, it's good stuff. So.
And to that point, these first handful of meets as we approach December 2nd, is that correct? When you begin?
Yes.
Trenton. As we approach, are you going to have opportunities to get everybody involved, especially a lot of these young guys who you don't necessarily know what they have yet? I mean, is everybody going to be in the lineup the first handful of meets?
So with the duels, you get, you have your 14 weight classes. The way it looks on paper, we should have every weight class filled. And we do have Trent and Palmyra. So if we can try to get a kid an opportunity in one of those duels, we'll try. But definitely here in the beginning is trying to develop those, inexperienced kids, if you will, trying to just make sure they have the fundamentals, before we turn them loose.
It's a double-edged sword, both be an athlete, but also have some idea what you're doing.
Yeah. And, it's like wrestling has all these nuances, it's just not two guys out there rubbing foreheads, it's, you have to have some skill, you gotta have some craft. And so we wrestle that home duel, and then the weekend we go to Pleasant Hill for a pretty solid tournament. I mean, we get tested early. And then the following weekend, we're going to, send some of those inexperienced guys to a JV tournament, just kind of give them that opportunity to, wrestle somebody that's not in the practice room.
As far as your coaching philosophy, is that how you would like to have it? Just all across the board between a highly competitive tournament, you're going to see some pretty good wrestlers, as well as having an opportunity to send some kids to a JV, and everything in between. Is that how you would have it if you had your choice?
Yeah, and it is tough because you want to try to get those varsity guys as much mat time as possible, but with limited resources, you got to kind of have a balancing act. But I feel like I feel like it's pretty well balanced. Like we got our varsity guys, they wrestle a pretty tough schedule. Our schedule's no joke, and we do squeak in some JV tournaments where those guys can get experience. We tell our guys, whether you're a first year wrestler or you've been doing this since you were 5, like everybody's training for the same goal, and that goal is to wrestle at the state tournament. Like Brantley Cotlets, for example.
Perfect example.
Yeah, our goal is to get you through districts, so you're competing in Columbia.
To that point, realistic expectations for you as you go into the season, and I know it's always too early to tell, especially in wrestling, where weight classes might get mixed around between now and even a month from now. What do you anticipate just going into the season, coming off of a 7th place state finish a year ago?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
We graduated some, good kids last year, but they did their job and they passed the torch off, to this year's team. And I just based off, the little time we've had together, I feel like our guys are motivated. They know the end goal, and whether that's individually or a team, it's just kind of know their coaching philosophy. If everybody's doing their job, the bigger picture comes together.
Just one last thing before I let you go, Coach. Talk a little bit about your coaching staff. Who's helping you out this year?
I have Blake Howard helping me out this year. He wrestled for me, so it's kind of full circle. He is a state medalist, and he wrestled at Missouri Valley College. The same as me. So it's good to see a guy like that giving back to the program. So
very good. Kirksville boys wrestling coach James Alter, thank you very much for joining us. Joined now by Kirksville girls wrestling coach Nick Cook. Coach, how are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Yep, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, thank you for joining us. Talk a little bit about now that practice is underway and you've gotten a chance to look at what your team looks like and your numbers a little bit. How has that gone so far, looking ahead to the beginning of the season?
Oh, it's great. So we're going into our third week of practice. This practice number 11 was today. I got 15 girls out, which is the highest that we've ever had in the Kirksville high school girls wrestling program. Spread pretty evenly. I got, I think, 9 or so freshmen, like 5 or 6 seniors. I think I only got 1 junior, a few sophomores. So, it's good to see those younger girls coming up through the system. This will also be the first year that I've had, I got one new girl. Everybody else is experienced. So girls wrestling, high school wrestling in Missouri is still pretty new. It's, I think, been around since 2018 in Missouri. And so I think that's 7 years. So we've had it 5 or 6 years in Kirksville. So just kind of, with the boys program, I coach youth wrestling for about, 17, 18 years and working with those youngsters. And then they go through the program, middle school, and then to the high school. We're just starting to see that with girls. And this year, especially, got some freshmen that have been wrestling for several years in kids club and middle school. So we're excited about that. Practices are going good. Good mindsets at practice, positive mental attitude. Girls, are writing down their goals. They know what they want to do. The work ethic, we're already ahead of schedule on my practice plan. So that's, been a big surprise to me. And just really appreciate the work ethic that these girls are putting out, early on in the season. So excited to see where it leads us.
Talk about, like you mentioned, relatively new sport, only the 7th year, 8th year of its existence in Missouri, and generating that level of interest in Kirksville. Obviously, Kirksville is a very passionate town when it comes to wrestling, but having numbers like that, 15 girls, you said,
Mm-hmm.
Where do you kind of, how have you seen this program evolve, I guess I should ask?
Yeah, so I came in this my 3rd year. My first year, I think we started out with like 7 or 8 girls. Last year, I started out with 12, maybe ended up with 9. Then this year at 15. And it's growing. There's a lot of stigmatism around wrestling, especially girls wrestling, and stereotypes. And so I think just educating the public and other girls on, what those are and that those aren't real, and, how beneficial that wrestling is, especially educating parents on all the money that's out there for college scholarships. College coaches constantly calling us, needing to fill their programs. It's growing. It's an NCAA Division I program now, which is really fueling the fire. And there's other programs, D3s, D2 programs, as far as the NCAA, NAIA, there's different kinds of programs, but it's really exploding. I've heard, statistics that it's one of the fastest growing sports in the nation, girls or women's wrestling. So just educating the community, girls, parents on that, letting them know that it is a separate program from the boys program, I think has been huge. Just having these girls that have wrestled for me now for the last 3 or 4 years, talking with their friends, trying to recruit some of their friends is helping too. We've started the Kirksville Wrestling Foundation in the community. That's been a big benefit and help to, just getting wrestling out into the community's eye. Where it's kind of forefront, people are always thinking about it and donating to it too. And I see, I've been up working with some of the kids club kids, watching some of their practices. There's a lot of girls wrestling that, which, 10, 15 years ago, maybe one girl would be in that program. And now, I think I saw like 8 or 9 the other day in their little peewee program. So it's gaining popularity, and I think it will. We just kind of stick with it and keep educating the community, and I think we'll see the program continue to grow. So,
do the girls have an equivalent or the same umbrella as kids club and stuff like that before we start talking about?
No, so right now it's just in the high school programs. We're in the kids club. You're starting to see some with Missouri USA Wrestling and USA Wrestling in general, where they do have a girls' state at that peewee level or kids club level. Middle school, we're not quite there yet, but definitely in the high school too. You're starting to see some more girls' tournaments, so it is catching on. Our programs aren't really split in Kirksville. The girls are wrestling with the boys. We try to. I know Coach Derek, he tries to get girls to wrestle with girls, but there are still some girls that are wrestling with boys at that age. But, the more girls we get out, the easier it is to have girls wrestle girls in practice and then just going to compete in girl-sanctioned events only. So it's coming along.
Realistic expectations as you look ahead toward the beginning of the season. Do you anticipate most of your weight classes being filled?
I think we're going to do pretty good. There's some girls that, we're going to have some wrestle-offs to see where girls go, and then some other girls are going to have to decide, how they want to move. But there's 14 weight classes from 105 to 235. I'm kind of right in the middle there. I'm kind of stacked at my 145 to 170. I got several girls in there, and it's pretty competitive in our room at those weight classes. So I'm kind of eager to see how that plays out. Everything below that, I think we're going to be able to fill. We might have one weight, at the lower end, that we might have open. But other than that, I think we should be able to fill. I'm hoping at least 12 of those 14 spots. So that'll be huge for us, especially in conference and district play. A lot of teams are still trying to fulfill their roster. So when it shows the team points, having those full rosters is going to help us out a bunch too. So,
and there'll be a number of times over the course of the season, obviously, that you run into duels where, girls in the lineup aren't going to get to wrestle. There'll be a lot of open spots. Yeah, I've noticed that over the course of just how your seasons have been scheduled the past couple of years, running into a bunch of opens and not being able to get every girl the competitive experience that they necessarily need. Do you feel like across the state that has improved a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And you're seeing it too, high school level and in kids club, where you're seeing more tournaments popping up, scrambles, doing whatever we can, so if you got some varsity, junior varsity and maybe first year freshmen, we'll call, entry level type kids too, they're like, hey, bring them all. We'll try to get them in, or let us know your entries beforehand. We'll try to get everybody in to try to get them those competitions. Tournament wise, it's not as big of a problem as like duels or quad meets when you're going up against other teams that maybe don't have full rosters. So we try to set, or at least I try to set the schedule. You're allowed 50 matches before districts.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know they capped it.
And so, I try to set a schedule where I can get those girls at least the opportunity to get those 50 matches in. And if, we start getting towards the end of the season and some of those girls are close, and we need to set them out a tournament or a duel or something, we can do that. But just, I think that kind of falls upon the coaches, just making the schedules as competitive as you can and making sure that we can try to get them to that 50 if it requires. Maybe I don't take a full roster, towards the end of the season. But so, yeah, we've been working on that in the last couple of years. We've been pretty close on some of those. So kind of happy where that's gone. So.
Talk a little bit about your roster. I want to give Brooklyn Raider Johnson a tip of the cap for her signing with Missouri Valley to play softball this past week, but she's got a lot of senior year left, and I know that she has pretty high expectations for herself going into her senior year.
Yeah, she's a returning state medalist, took 6 last year. Wrestled for me actually in kids club and didn't wrestle for quite a while. Didn't wrestle her freshman year, but came out her sophomore year and has wrestled now 3 years for me, going to be a senior. She wants to do a little better at state this year. She feels like she's got the experience, the know-how, made it to state, kind of saw what that's all about. So she's ready to, take it to the next step there and maybe try to place a little higher. And she's competitive. Brooklyn's a real strong gal. Doesn't do a lot of moves, but the moves she does, she's really good at. She got really good balance, and she's kind of a hoss in the practice room. So I think a lot of these other girls are able to learn from her and see what it takes to climb to that level. And, we got a board in the wrestling room that we keep track of state placers, state medalist, and, her name up there along with Madison Crawford, who I coached a couple of years ago, is up there a couple times. And, these girls look up to her, and Brooklyn knows that not only in the high school, but middle school and kids club level too. And I think she's really stepped into that role real well as far as being a leader. And we're excited to see how she does this year. We got a few other returning seniors. Morgan Crawford, she's been close to going to state the last couple of years. I think she's ready to take the next step as well. I think she's going to sign to play softball in college too. She's excited about that. And, she's got her goals set for wrestling this year. And I was kind of glad to see where those goals were. Peyton Smith, Peyton Cornelison, she's going to be a returning. Last year was her first year, and she's really excited. She's worked a lot with me this off season, kind of just focused on wrestling in the off season. She was cheering, but she decided to do wrestling. So excited to see where she's at. And then Haley Rock, she's going to be my heavyweight again this year. This will be her 4th year. Haley wrestled for me quite a bit in kids club too. So we're excited to see where Haley goes. She wants to make it to state. I think she's in a little bit better shape this year, a little healthier. She had some injuries last year. So we're kind of excited to see where she goes too. So we got a pretty good group of seniors, that's leading these younger kids and, give them somebody to look up to. They're kind of used to my style of practice, which I think is going to help those younger freshmen out too. I'm kind of a yeller. I yell a lot in practice, and so try not to scare them off. And I think those older girls are going to help out with that and give them the direction they need to be successful.
I'll let you go on the same note that I let Coach Alter go on. Talk a little bit about your coaching staff. Who's helping you out this year?
Yeah, so this year returning with me is Nikayla Cook. Nikayla's my daughter. She grew up wrestling with me. She grew up in a wrestling family. Had 2 brothers that wrestled, and she's real familiar with it. It's been fun coaching with her. A lot of times she takes the words right out of my mouth. She's been around me for so many years coaching wrestling, so she's done a real good job with the girls. I think the girls respect her. Really gets into it, just is really ate up with it. We'll be wrestling all day, filming stuff, and we come home, it's, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and she's popping those videos on and taking notes and just really ate up with it. So, she really enjoyed it. And then I really got a kick out of watching her, and the passion that she has for wrestling. So she's got a young son, be one of my first grandsons. He's been hanging around the girls too, and just kind of watching him grow up around it too is just kind of fun. So just, again, keeping it in the wrestling, family. That's kind of always been the big thing in Kirksville. It's been kind of a family affair and a wrestling community, and everybody's pretty tight. And I think just being able to continue that with my daughter, being the assistant coach is, it's been fun, and we look forward to see what we can do with these girls, in the future. So.
Very good, Coach. I think that bringing up that distinction that these are 2 separate entities, these are 2 separate programs is something very important. I'm glad that it's something that you have been right there on the ground floor of getting rolling, especially with Kirksville. I guess just talk very briefly about how kind of cool that's been, just to see this grow into something that's now a respected institution in Missouri as far as girls wrestling.
Yeah, that is. It's been very, and I always said, growing up in kids club, if we could ever get girls involved with wrestling, that, at one point a few years ago, wrestling, they were actually going to take it out of the Olympics. It was scheduled to leave the Olympics. It's one of the oldest sports in the Olympics, one of the oldest sports known to mankind. And I, just kind of talking back then, if we could ever get girls into it, that, it would grow exponentially and it would never go away. And we're kind of getting there. It's, I started out, Jason Munn, he's alumni of Kirksville High School. He was a state champion along with his brother, Josh Munn. And Jason, he moved to the Kansas City area. He actually had a daughter that wrestled for Platte County that was a state champion a few years ago. So we used to go down and watch her wrestle, and just to see where it's come from, 2018 to now. Right now we have 2 classes. It started out with 1 class. Now we have 2 classes. Next year they're going to move it to 3, have 3 classes. We've been wrestling kind of with the boys at the Hearn Center at the same time, in late February. And now the boys are going to have their own week and the girls are going to have their own week. Boys are going to wrestle at Mizzou Arena. Girls are going to wrestle at the Hearn Center. So it's just growing, and every year it's just getting bigger and bigger. I already talked about the college presence. Iowa's getting it. Mizzou's talking about getting it. It's just growing everywhere, and to be a part of that is huge. And I explain that to the girls, and while they're young and a little naive, I try to express that to them that, hey, you all are trailblazers, you're trendsetters. Someday people are going to look back and you're going to be able to say that, I was a part of the beginning of that. And that's a huge responsibility. And people are constantly looking at you. Little girls are looking at you, and, they're going to be the first ones to have their name on the board in the wrestling room, and the first one to have their name on these, championship books that Misha puts out. And, we'll be able to look back at that and say, you all were a part of something and building something that is going to be bigger than you, bigger than, us. And there's a lot of responsibility in that, and to take pride in it. And there's a lot of people, it's not just the girls, but the community is really got behind us. Shanna Strimmel, she stepped up and was one of the first head coaches to take the girls, and, didn't have a lot of wrestling experience, but, saw the benefit in it and really stepped up and helped out with that program. And Coach Alter was the same way. And, hats off to Sarah Williams, our athletic director. And, so it's an opportunity that I'm grateful to be a part of, and excited to do my part to try to help build this and continue the great wrestling tradition in Kirksville. And I'm excited to see, where it goes in the next few years.
Fantastic stuff, Coach. Coach Nick Cook, Kirksville Girls High School Wrestling. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Joined now by Truman State University Offensive Coordinator Austin Zoda. How are you doing this afternoon, Coach?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. At the time of this recording, the Bulldogs have received some exceptional news the night prior. For the first time in 31 years, the Dogs will be dancing. First time since 1994 that Truman State University, then Northeast Missouri State University, has made the national tournament. And I know it's probably a little bit surreal for you still, as not only a coach, but also a program that means so much to you as an alumnus. Just where are those emotions right now?
Oh, they've been all over the place. I was telling the guys on the team in 2016, my senior year, we had an opportunity, just like we've had this year, to go to McKendree and try to win a football game to get the bid into the playoffs then. And we ultimately fell short that year. And so I kind of told the guys last time I was on McKendree's field, I was crying. It was the last game of my career, losing out on a shot to go to the playoffs. And so this, personally for me, like you said, as an alum and, somebody that's so invested in this football program, like, it's been a wild couple 48 hours of emotions for me, and I'm just so excited we've been able to kind of crack the ceiling and keep taking this thing hopefully to newer heights. So
what I said to Kellen after Saturday's game, and I would say the same thing to you, especially for your offense that has been putting up points in bunches ever since the bye week, ever since the week after you lost to UIndy, and we'll come back to Indy here in a second. But putting up a flurry of points and really just controlling everything that you can control. In a postseason that's dictated by a committee, it's not dictated specifically by record, it's dictated by the people who make those decisions. You guys, and especially your offense, have done everything that you need to do to be, to impress the people who you need to impress. I guess just talk a little bit about these past handful of weeks. And I know that it kind of it's not ideal that you feel like you have to blow everybody out, but blowing everybody out does go a long way too.
Yeah, we talk about it as a staff and with the squad that, we play to a standard, no matter who the opponent is, no matter where we're playing. When we step out on the field, there's a standard. That standard needs to be met. And over the past 6 weeks, like you've said, since the bye week, I think our guys have really taken a hold of that and really, found out, who we are as a football team and what it takes to be successful, because there's a price to pay each and every week, whether it's Tuesday practice, inside run, or Thursday 2-minute drills. Like there's a price to pay, and our guys have paid that price the last 6 weeks, and you can see it, with the product that we put out on the field.
Talk a little bit about, while it's still fresh in your mind, and I'm sure over the course of the week it'll seem like an eon ago, but this past Saturday in Lebanon, Illinois, I thought was one of the most complete games that the Dogs have played this year. Did some things right that I know that you've been for limited penalties, which is something that I know that you guys have hit on a lot. Did a lot of other things right that I know that Kellen Nesbitt was excited about. What went well this Saturday?
Well, I think just, as a football team and any team in general, you want to be playing your best game at the end of the season. And that's something that I can, firmly say we've done over the last 2 years. Like, it seems like every week, we get a little bit better. We find a way to improve on things that we may have slowed us down in the past, and our ability to find ways to improve week in and week out is just a testament to the guys we have on this team. Coach K says all the time, especially this time of year towards the end of the season, a lot of teams aren't getting any better. And our team has seemed to get better every week, and it's fun to watch and fun to go to work with these guys.
And I think even from an outside perspective, it's incredibly encouraging for somebody on the coaching staff to say our team's gotten better every week. But I think even from an outside perspective, even a casual fan would be able to tell that. What goes into that specifically? And this is kind of where I'm going to bring it back to Indy a little bit. I know that that's one that you guys had circled on the board, since the offseason. Maybe there's an advantage of having lost that game early instead of it being late in the year like it usually is.
No, I think the timing of everything was very important with how that played out. Everybody has Indy circled on the calendar whenever, the schedule comes out every year. And we didn't play, our best in that game. And to have the bye week right after, to where we could kind of go back and focus on the fundamentals and focus on, what makes Truman, from a football team standpoint. Like, it couldn't have happened at a better time. And you were able to see that as we kind of made some really good strides over the last half of the season. But I think the timing of that bye week and just allowed everybody to reevaluate what was going on, get back to the fundamentals, get back to some of the techniques that aren't as, impressed upon, whether it's, during like spring ball or fall camp and that kind of thing. And we were able to do that, and it really, lit a fire under our guys, and we were able to get it done.
Couldn't be much more storybook. The Bulldogs get in as the 6th seed traveling to 3 seed Indianapolis, and there's no other way you'd rather have it drawn up than getting a second shake at the Greyhounds.
No doubt. And just like I said, coming off that, like I was telling the quarterbacks earlier, the way that our offense, has evolved since that game. There's going to be a different team that's rolling into Indianapolis that they didn't see 7 weeks ago. And so we're really excited about that.
Talk a little bit about the process over the past handful of weeks. Like I mentioned a moment ago, it being strictly a committee decision, just kind of how this has worked out, and just in your head, the highs and lows of starting at 7, falling to 10, and as you guys learned last night, jumping back up to 6. What are you thinking along the way that you can't necessarily tell your players? It's just going through your mind as a coach.
Well, shoot, like I said, I was in this position in 2016. I think we were ranked as high as, maybe 5th or 4th, maybe potentially even hosting a home playoff game. And the biggest thing for me and Coach K and Coach Doc, who were all there during that time, was like, let's just focus on being 1-0 this week, right? And if we can do that, like, we'll let the chips fall as they may. The things that you said were outside of our control, but the things that we could control, which were playing good football, playing to the standard, and winning football games, that was the thing that was on the forefront of our minds. So we were kind of blinders on, eyes down. Let's focus on the next opponent.
Talk about your guys' work ethic, discipline. The way that you phrased it that I really like is they paid the price. Talk about your offense a little bit, things that some of the uncoachables, just watching these guys grow up over the course of the season.
Yeah, you just look at the talent that we have offensively. It makes my job a lot of fun, and our coach's job a lot of fun. We have so many guys, on the squad on our offense that, require the ball and require touches. And, it's fun for us as coaches to kind of, game plan and find a way we're going to get all those guys the ball, number one. And so just their talent, is outstanding. And then when you put together like their work ethic and their coachability, the price that we're paying, like our dudes are flying around hitting in Tuesday practices and inside run. And in this day and age, it's kind of uncommon, for that to happen. And, they're excited, they're flying around, they're hitting each other. They just love football. And when you can get a group like that that's talented and loves football and loves the process, good things typically happen. And so hopefully we can continue to develop that, continue to grow that over the years.
Your offense has been exceptionally fun when it comes to kind of a next man up mentality. Gerard Gruey is a name that comes to mind as somebody who over the course, all of your tight ends really, but Gruey is a guy who has turned into a complete and total asset. And it's been really fun to watch. I thought to begin the year at Washburn when Battle got hurt, I thought that was going to be devastating for this offense, but it's always, you guys find a way to get somebody unexpected involved seemingly each week that maybe another team hasn't seen on film.
Oh, and that just goes back to what I was talking about with the talent that we have. I think that Denham went down at SBU and then we put in Pulliam and then he breaks off a 30-yard run and pulls his hammy. And then we put in Stevens. He ends up with 120 yards on the game. And that's just the kind of depth and that's just the kind of talent that we have, on our offense. And that's why we're trying to just find ways to get these guys touches and to get them the ball and let them go make us look like good coaches.
That's exactly right. Talk a little bit about, I think this will be kind of fun for the listenership. I was a little, and I don't know why I was surprised to find this. When you had originally come to Truman State University as an offensive coordinator, I didn't even realize that you had played offense in high school.
Yep.
I'd just always known you as a defensive back, and I'm sure that that's turned a handful of heads over the past, since this is now the end of your second year. I'm sure people have thought they looked at it incorrectly, excuse me.
Yep.
Talk about that transition of kind of, over the course of the past 2 years, retraining your brain, so to speak, for an offensive mind from a dude who played defense collegially. If there's anything that goes into that.
So when I left here, I went to Fort Hays State as a graduate assistant, and I coached the running backs and tight ends there. So that was kind of my first job, was on the offensive side of the ball. And, I just fell in love with the scheme. I fell in love with, the different ways to coach it, the different ways to watch film, and using what I've had from my defensive background of being coached by Coach K, to our advantage, in offensive staff rooms and that kind of stuff. And so the transition was kind of wild at first, but I've really settled into it over the past 7-8 years. And I love coaching offense. I love being on the offensive side of the ball. My dad, he's a high school coach down in Texas. He coaches the defensive line. And so he tells me all the time I've gone over to the dark side, and he gives me a hard time every time I'm back and seeing him. But I love being off the side of the ball. I love the guys that we got, and it's fun, watching them develop and watching them have success.
It doesn't really feel like you've gone over to the dark side when you've scored about 250 points in the past 6 weeks. Where do you guys go from here as far as prep specifically for Indy, things that you have seen over, especially that bye week when you had plenty of time to reflect on it? What have they done since then? How have they changed? How is this going to be a different football game than it was the first time around at Stoke Stadium?
That's a great question. I think they do what they do from a defensive perspective, and they do it really well. And so from that aspect, like, there's not going to be a lot of change for like our guys in, the defensive game plan that they're going to have. And so it's going to be, our job as coaches and players to really, take another look at what that is and how to exploit some areas that we tried exploiting, back 7 weeks ago, and then finding new ways to attack their defense. And so that's the challenge that playing a team twice in the year provides, especially one as good as Indy.
And like you and Kellen so frequently preach, 1-0 each week, but Super Regional 3 is loaded.
Mm-hmm.
You have the defending national champion on the top side of that bracket. No one wanted to draw no one wanted to draw Ferris. No one wanted to draw Ferris. Seating wise, it worked out about as well as it could have. Do you think that the chips fell as they should have outside of your 3 versus 6 matchup? Is that about what you anticipated?
Sure, yeah, and we were ready for whatever. I think every time one of the names got mentioned, I think they said the Bulldogs for Duluth. I think our guys all got on edge for a second, so we were expecting whatever, and we're going to be thankful for whatever, and we're going to be ready to go with whatever the outcome was. And so we were thankful to get this opportunity, and now let's go see what we can do with it.
Very good. When are you guys taking off? You're going to spend a couple days in Indy?
We're going to take off Friday. We're going to keep it business as usual for our guys. We already played in Indianapolis this year playing Butler, and so we're going to kind of keep the schedule the same and very similar to that weekend. And, I think our guys are pretty much in flow now in season, so they're going to be trying to keep things as routine as possible is kind of the goal.
And you have a great group to do it, I would say. They fully anticipated being here, but at the same time, like we've spoken about, control what you can control.
Sure.
But it fell as it should. Anything different in practice this week? Anything at all with the additional?
No, we're going to keep it business as usual. Like I said, the routine that we've created is a good routine. The plan to win is the plan to win, and we're going to keep it business as usual and rhyme this thing into this weekend.
Very good. Truman State University football offensive coordinator Austin Zoda. It's been a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you.
That'll about wrap it up for us here at Pickler Memorial Library. Thank you guys very much for joining us this evening. And Bulldogs at Indianapolis, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time on Saturday.
Yep.
At the University of Indy. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Raining Cats and Dogs.